Aloha. Welcome to Ably Seminars session. We're going to talk about deeds. And people go, what's a deed? A deed is a legal document written by an attorney that tells who the owners are. And that's the evidence of title to real property. So when you buy something from, say, Home Depot, you get a bill of sale, a receipt, and that shows you that you bought the property or bought the item. Well, real estate is very different because you're buying a piece of property and they need to know, or someone needs to know, who's the legal owner. So on the deed, you usually see the grantor, who's the giver or the seller, and you're going to see the grantee, who's the buyer. And on that deed is going to show, is the owner married or are they single? And also, how is title held? And we talked about the 4 ways to hold title to property before, about severalty, tenants in common, joint tenancy, and tenancy by the entirety. So the deed will have all of that. The deed will also have what they call a legal description of the property. And in the deed, they do not use an address, and they don't use a tax map key number to identify the parcel of property. It is a legal description that gives what they call the meets and bounds description. And frankly, only attorneys, engineers, surveyors, and escrow title people know about how to read the legal description. For the rest of us, it doesn't make any sense. And really for us, the title would be best, or the property description would be an address and tax map key number, because we can drive and we can Google and we can find the property. But for legal documentation, there needs to be a legal description that's put on the deed. So where do you find the deeds to the property? Typically, these documents are recorded at what they call the Bureau of Conveyances. And the Bureau of Conveyance is a state-run building, organization, or department that records all of these documents. So what kind of documents can you find at the Bureau of Conveyance? Well, one would be the deed. Who sold the property to who? And over the chain of title, you're going to see from A to B to B to C to C to D, etc. That's called the chain of title. And every time they do a deed, the grantor is a seller, the grantee is a buyer. Next time, when the buyer sells a property, the buyer was a grantee, now they'll be the grantor, and the next buyer will be the grantee, etc. So they call it the chain of title. And you see the chain of title in all the documents that are recorded at the Bureau of Conveyance. There's only one location where they record all these documents, and they house all these documents, and usually it's on a computer. In the past, they used to have it in file cabinets and books and pages, but now we're computerized, so all those documents are computerized and they're held in the computer system. When Kamehameha gave the land to what we call the Kanakas, in the very beginning, what they call the Great Mahele, Kamehameha gave the land, certain lands, to the Kanakas. And then the Kanakas, let's say Keawe got the land from Kamehameha, then he sold it to Keone. Then now you have a deed going from Kamehameha to the first Kanaka and then the next, etc. That was called a regular system. Then a fellow named Robert Torrance came along from Australia, and he convinced the territorial government of Hawaii that he had a better system of recording these documents. And they called this the Torrance or land court system. So Hawaii has 2 systems. The first one that Kamehameha started with regular system, and then Torrance came along and said, I have a better refined system, and they call it the land court system. So Hawaii has 2 systems. One, the regular system, and then some properties went from regular system, said, oh, I like Torrance system better, so they switched and went from regular system to the land court system. And then either you're in land court or you're in regular system. And we cannot go into great detail on the intricacies of land court versus regular, but just know that in Hawaii, we have two systems. They also have, if you look at the deed, the first page, if you see the first page and there's a stamp on the top left, then that's a land court property. If it's a stamp on the top right, then it's regular system. So remember L for land court and R for regular system. And typically you'd either have land court or regular system. Now, how do you know that your title is clear? So some insurance companies came along and said, hey, we'll give you title insurance. And you go, what is that? Well, that's kind of like automobile insurance or fire insurance. So usually when you buy that kind of insurance, you buy the policy and you get covered. Then if your house catches on fire or you get into a car accident, then the insurance will cover you. Title insurance, it goes the opposite way. The title company will say, hey, we looked at the history of the ownership of the land, and we think the title is clear. The chain of title is clean. So they'll say, based on what we've seen, we'll give you a title policy. And if something happened in the history of that land, and there's a flaw or there's a problem, we'll protect you so that you're covered and that your title is clean. So now, in the title insurance system, an event occurred and the title company is guaranteeing you that the title is clean. So let's say there was forgery in the deed. Someone lied. Now, the new person that's coming in to the system says, hey, that's my property. And the other guy had a forged deed. So the title insurance company will look at it and say, oh my goodness, somebody fooled us. So they're going to cover the title insurance and pay the person that got cheated and pay them the amount of money that they lost in the transaction. So in a title insurance policy, an event occurred and you won't know that there was a forgery or fraud or whatever, and it'll only show up when someone files a claim saying, I'm the legal owner. So with a fire insurance, automobile insurance, you get the policy and then you're covered. In title insurance, an event occurred, but they don't know that there's a detrimental event that occurred. Then when this comes to light, the title insurance will cover for any losses. So it could be forgery, fraud, it could be mistaken chain of title, and other issues that the title company will cover. You pay for title insurance once. So when you buy the property, the seller usually pays 60% of title insurance coverage. The buyer usually pays 40% of the title coverage, and that will cover the buyer from any potential defects that could have occurred in the chain of title. And that title insurance is good for life. So as long as you own it, the title coverage is intact. You only pay that premium once. Now, if you sell the property, the title insurance goes away, and the new buyer has to have a separate title policy. So the seller and the buyer, again, split the title insurance fees 60-40, 60% by the seller, 40% by the buyer. So the title insurance companies make money every time there's a transfer of title. Hope that helps in understanding the evidence of title and land court, regular system, and title insurance. Aloha.